Okay.
I don't know how many people will be live, but the good thing is that with YouTube everything is recorded and okay, yeah. I think we're okay. Paolo, do you hear us so that we start? Just say hi in the chat. Let's get. Yep. Okay, so let's start, guys. I mean, I'm really happy to have you here tonight with us in this hot summer night, at least in Rome. And I'm glad that we managed to set up this session so quickly and about so like interesting topic, transactions in the future. Here with me today, there's Marco Castignoli, working with Sourcify, a project by the Ethereum Foundation, and Rosco, working on Revoke Cash and many other things. But I will first leave the word to you guys so that you can give our community like short intro about yourself, what you're working on, and whatever you like to say. Yeah. Who goes first?
Hey guys. Hey guys, I'm Rosco. I've been working in crypto since around 2018. Worked for some different companies over the years, mostly done like freelance and stuff. And in 2019, I started Revoke.cash. And initially, that was more of a side project while I was just doing my regular job and regular work. But sort of over those years, it grew into something a lot bigger. So for like sometime in 2022, last year, I decided to go full time on Revoke.cash, which is what I've been working on most of the time nowadays.
Perfect. Go on, Marco.
Nice. So actually, I joined the crypto space during the first spaghetti. So couple years ago. No, 1 year ago actually. Maybe 2 years ago. And before I was more into other decentralized technologies such as IPFS at the beginning. I was like too scared from the whole crypto hype that there is around the blockchain in general. But then, the good things past the bad things, and so I like totally throw myself completely in this beautiful ecosystem. And so last year I was so lucky to join the Ethereum Foundation with working on Sourcify. So now we are working on offering some alternative to the Etherscan centralized verification, and that's it.
Cool. Really cool. Yeah, no, I of course, I already like seen your projects. I know you, Marco, from Spaghetti Eat. Actually, I think it's there that we met, where we met for the first time, and then I met Rosco pitching Revoke Cash in Amsterdam. So I already know something about your projects. But today, the main topic, as I said in the beginning, is about how we imagine transactions in the futures and how we can improve them to fix these user experience and accessibility issues that we have in the Web3 ecosystems right now. And I think that you guys on two different sides, or at least you are trying to solve these issues. Maybe Rosco more from a security perspective, I'd say, while Marco from readability. One. But before going deep dive into the issues, I wanted to have some intro about what you think are the challenges that we are facing right now in the Web3 ecosystem, in the Ethereum ecosystem, with especially with the user experience and regarding transactions. Whoever wants to start, maybe Marco this time, since Rosco presented introduced first. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's one of the key topics in our main, like, yeah, in our job at Sourcify is actually to tackle the human readability problem of the transactions, because from my point of view, transactions nowadays are something like more for technical people, even if everyone is actually sending transaction every day. So that, I mean, it's easy to see this when you just look at a transaction. Most of the time it's just some hex digits, and I mean, even technician don't know what's going on. So yeah, I think that at least for me, this is the start for like, yeah, the place from which we have to start working on.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, and I kind of want to like add to that I think actually with the current sort of state of UX around like transactions around wallets, I think the UX and like the readability also becomes a security issue just by itself. Like when people just don't really know what they're doing or don't really understand what they're signing, then that is a security risk just by itself. So I think those two sort of fields overlap a lot at this point.
Yeah, no, totally makes a lot of sense. And one of the things that we discussed a lot in the past with some members of our community is about user experience and readability. Especially, we were discussing about the fact that in Web2 or in the current version of the internet, people can interact with applications, can send emails, can post stuff on social media, can watch videos without knowing what's happening behind the scenes. And I feel like that's something that is not true, of course, for obvious reasons right now in Web3, and transaction readability should go in that direction, right? So allowing more and more people interacting with decentralized applications, with the blockchain and whatever, without actually knowing how it's working, everything behind the scenes. What in your opinion are like the first steps, or at least the one that we will take in the near future to make some improvements in the directions to help like people, traditional users, maybe my mom, my grandmother, um, using these kind of complex applications that we are using today?
Now you start. Now we are.
Rosco, go on,
That,
We
Rosco.
go one by one.
yeah.
So yeah, no, I do think a lot of the first steps can be taken by wallets, perhaps. I know that there are some wallets that are giving some more attention to this sort of readability aspect, where I think I'm a big fan of MetaMask, but in terms of what they really show when you sign something, I think they could definitely improve, especially when you're thinking about things like gasless signatures, which seems like it's less risky than signing a transaction. Even though we've seen in sort of recent years that gasless signatures can carry a lot of risk, for example, with permit approvals, but also for NFT listings. If you go on OpenSea, you don't send a transaction to list your NFT, but then that also means that if you go on the scam website, you might actually sign away all your NFTs just by signing a single kind of transaction. And I think the solution for that kind of is both ways. Like on one hand, wallets can do a better job at sort of displaying exactly what is happening, which action is going to be taken here, which assets are we talking about. But at the same time, I also do think there's some responsibility on the side of the application developers, because also what I have seen in recent times is that a lot of these application developers, like NFT marketplaces or other sort of like dexes and things, they try to create very sort of elaborate and flexible sort of contract systems that allow for a lot of things, but then that also means that it just becomes harder for the wallet to really understand what and display to the user what this application is doing. So I think it should come from both sides. Like the application should also really try to put in the work to make their application in such a way that it's easier for the wallets to do something with that.
Yeah, definitely. Like, also, I do think we need a lot. Like, in the future, there will be more standards, like more maybe ERCs, exactly to like group similar kind of transactions for different applications, so that then wallets can parse those information with like in a specific way. But I think that the main actually the main big the next big thing in the blockchain ecosystem will definitely be account abstraction implemented in the real world, because account abstraction is actually doing what Rosco was saying before. So basically, instead of interacting and having to sign, we can like create many abstraction layers. And abstraction layers is just a case that is the same word as abstraction, but so that the user is not seeing anything of all the layers above, and all the layers above are just there are just maybe software running on your PC that are automatically checking all the transactions that are doing lots of stuff. Like they are automatically reading these transactions using those standards, and then the user at the end will just see the button and will press on the button, and boom, it will automatically do whatever. So this is I hope that this is the future that I have in my mind.
Yeah, no, totally. Account abstraction is something that I've been following closely as well, because I was working on something in that direction. So, abstracting some complexity on the application layer and, of course, the wallet layer to allow common users interacting with an application that I was developing. But my question has always been, at least right now, for like the state of the art of tooling, SDKs and libraries that we have, is still difficult to provide the same level of ownership of your assets, of your account, your keys, whatever. And offering also a nice user experience, possibly abstracting many complexity layers. And I'm curious to know like your take on this, because when I was trying to build this project, I remember that we were like looking for solutions that will not compromise, of course, in the ownership and security of users' data and let's say private keys and whatever, but at the same time offering them a nice and seamless user experience, similar to the one that we already experience on traditional platforms that we use on a daily basis. So what's your take on that? Where's the good trade-off? Do you think that we still need to get there in terms of tooling and whatever we need to build these kind of things?
So I think that most of today's transactions are are just for are just monetary transactions. So of course, for monetary transactions, you need the higher level of security. And so I see in the future, even with account abstraction implemented, most people will still use some. I don't know if they will be public and private keys, so signing like we are doing today, but people will still use some very secure system and like very not user friendly system to sign those kind of monetary transactions. But I also think, from the other hand, that for example, social transaction or gaming transactions, those kind of transactions that are like less, I don't know, less important in general, they could potentially implement some more user friendly way of authenticating. It could be a token. I don't know. I still don't know exactly, because I think right now tooling for this kind of situation are not yet production ready.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's also interesting what you mentioned about sort of these very secure and not so user-friendly systems versus the more user-friendly but less secure systems, and that is also kind of the heart of the matter there, because what I meant, I mentioned earlier that those things could kind of go together, or at least up until a certain point, you need to have this base level of user friendliness to even be secure. But then, if we go past that, they really go against each other, kind of. And yeah, I do think that something like account abstraction could really be helpful in there. And what, like, I guess one of the things that I could imagine being a thing with account abstraction is within the same wallet, having different authentication mechanisms for these different things, where you maybe have one private key to sign, like you said, Marco. I'm also not sure like what it's going to look like, if there's going to be private keys or whatnot. But let's say there is a private key that you can sign certain things with, and then there's one that you can sign other things with. Or maybe for the high value transactions, you'll have to have like some 2FA methods, maybe a different wallet that you also need to sign with. Yeah, I think it's pretty interesting what we can do once something like account abstraction is live, or is like more work, like further worked out than it is today. Yeah, also in terms of like automations, which is something that you mentioned before as well. Yeah, it's still sort of hard to understand everything that's going to be possible with that, but I think it's exciting.
Yeah, no, totally. And for sure, like we still have a lot of time this year, and a lot of hackathons will happen, and I'm sure people will keep building on account abstraction things, because I mean, I think it's one of the most trending topics ever since they released it on, was probably during it Denver, but still I didn't find anything really working or game changer for the space. But
We need abstraction for account abstraction.
So that is easier to use. No, yeah. But that said, of course, like account abstraction is trending in the UX and accessibility area of Web3, but I want to get back to our original topic about transactions, and especially I will start from the readability point of view that we talked about in the beginning. In your introduction, Marco, you mentioned that what you're trying to do with Sourcify is, of course, like trying to improve the readability of Ethereum transactions, and most importantly, using not a centralized verifier like Etherscan. Would you like to get more into it and tell us more about what you're doing to solve these challenges?
Sure. So maybe I'll just promote, as always, the data field in the bytecode, because at the end that's what I do most of my time. I'm just going around to other developers saying, "Do you know about the metadata field in the bytecode?" No. Basically, right now there is a huge problem, as I said, about the transaction readability, because most of the wallets, I mean, not most of the wallets, but most of the transactions that are being done are actually complete what we call blind transactions. So that sorry, blind signing, because you're actually signing some, as I said, hex digits that means nothing to both the user and the technical people, the final user and the technical people. So this time, most of the wallets are actually trying to tackle this problem by decoding the transaction, okay, decoding the call data. So you can just use the ABI. I don't know if, like, what's the level of our viewer here and in the future, but I'm just trying to make it simple. So basically, when you write a smart contract, then the smart contract is translated also in a very human readable way. And so you have like a list of all the functions and all the parameters of the functions that you can call. And so wallet developers are using this list to simply decode those hex digits into some human readable string, so that the user know what's going on. But the problem right now is that is the source of that information, because that information most of the time is fetched from Etherscan most of the time. Then the problem with Etherscan is that is a totally centralized database with closed APIs. It's not open source. So we are just I don't know. We are just fetching data like nowadays with Facebook or Twitter from a centralized database, and that's weird, because we are like in the decentralized world. So the solution for that the Solidity team actually implemented since Solidity 0.4, it was actually to append at the end of the bytecode, so at the end of the code of the smart contract, a string that is an IPFS link that points to all of the information about the contract. Maybe later I'll show you. We have a small playground, and it's super simple to use. And so what we are doing at Sourcify is pushing developers to use these wallet developers. Actually, we are in contact with MetaMask, with Coinbase. So, and we are asking them, we're making them aware actually that these metadata field exist, and they have to use it instead of fetching the files from a centralized entity.
Yeah, but so one thing that's interesting to me about human readability of transactions is that I think a big part of it is sort of this ABI decoding, understanding, what functions are being called, what the parameters are. But then there's also still like some part of it that isn't, right? So maybe we can give like some examples where, especially if I'm looking at it from sort of the the lens of security or like safety from scams. One thing that I've seen a lot of scammers do is they create this smart contract that has a function called like claim rewards or something like that, or security updates. And then when you just sort of take the ABI decoding at face value, then I think in MetaMask it shows up, claim rewards. And then a lot of people will sort of think, okay, I'm claiming rewards, but actually they're sending their ETH to this contract. So it's I think it's a hard problem, but I'm interested to hear if you have like any ideas about that. Sort of how do you, how do you enhance basically, I guess, the information that is in the ABI with stuff that helps prevent these kinds of scams?
Yeah, so that's a good argument, because I forgot to say that verifying the source code of a smart contract is not saying that the smart contract is safe in general from a security, let's say, point of view. So from scams or from hackers. Okay, so for those kind of stuff, you still need to audit the smart contract. You still need to have some sort of whitelisting or blacklisting, like I know you do, Rosco. So these are like two completely different topics, but in order to solve the issue of human readable transaction, or like transactions in general. And yeah, sorry for the questions, for your question. Actually, I have some ideas, but they're like in a very they're very young. They still need to grow a bit. And but basically, what I'm trying to think of is a way in which the I don't know, like famous actors of the ecosystem, let's say the most important wallets or the most important source contract verifiers, they share this database of really safe contracts, like from the scam point of view. So it's like all of these entities, they share their own whitelist or blacklist, and then the final user can ask all of them. And like, if all of them are saying, okay, this contract is safe to use, then you have like a good chance that the contract is really safe. It will be very, very hard for an hacker to hack all of the main entities in the ecosystem.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Now, when we were talking, I was thinking about, so in the beginning of the conversation, we were talking about account abstraction and how we want to hide some levels of complexity for like common users. And that was, well, now we are talking about human readability of transactions, of course, and that implies the fact that certain complexities, not all, like the complexity layers are abstracted for the users. And so I was wondering, maybe it's a stupid question and I'm missing something. But if the end goal is to hide everything that it's related to the on-chain interactions, wallet interactions, and whatever in the application layer, thanks to account abstraction, how do you think like human readability is something that of course makes sense, but I'm worried if it's just like a little step that we can maybe skip and go like directly to the abstracting everything. And of course that means we are trusting the application and whatever transaction they're sending with our account. Maybe just random talks. Who wants to go?
Yeah, so I think sort of, if you think about it, the more like abstractions that you create for the user. And yeah, it's kind of annoying that we're talking about sort of abstractions and account abstraction, which is like two different things. But so like the more just general abstractions that we create for users to sort of so that they have to understand maybe less of the technical details, the more we create of that, the more certain we also need to be of what we are telling the user they're going to do, I think. So I'm not sure if I'm how to say this best, but like I think if you don't know, so nowadays I think a wallet usually just doesn't really know what the user is doing just as much as the user doesn't know what they're doing. So MetaMask just tells you, okay, this is the smart contract. Maybe it tells you this is the function it's calling if it has access to the API. So it tells you a very limited amount of information, just the factual things that it knows to be true. But if you want to abstract that away, then you really need to know what is happening. And I think for that, it really makes sense for sort of human readable transactions to be sort of the intermediate step there. So now nobody really knows what is happening. And then we have to do some work to make the user understand what is happening, and then build on top of that so that the user doesn't have to understand what is happening. And I think that is sort of the path. And I think it would be hard to sort of skip that middle part, because I think it's all part of the same sort of trajectory. So I also don't think it's sort of wasted effort. Like if we want to be here, we still need to be here first, I think.
Yeah, totally agree. So yeah, just to say it in the same thing in another way with a couple example, one more technical and one more hopefully user friendly. Your question is so important because we are actually thinking about this question a lot while thinking about human readability. So, for example, we used to push a lot for NatSpec specification in the smart contracts. So basically, with the NatSpec is a way of documenting your own code while you are creating your smart contract, and there is this field in NatSpec that you can specify before a function, in which you actually write in a human readable way what the function will do. And you can also use some kind of templating system in which you can actually use the parameters that the user is passing through to the function. And so with that field called notice, then the wallet can use that field to display what's really going on. Okay. Like this example is to show that we tried to tackle the problem at the beginning directly from the smart contract to the final user. And what happened? No one used it. Because you cannot pretend to go from the source code to the user directly. That's what we did in the 80s with the computer. Like we were making people use the command line to use the computer in general. Okay, so the same thing I think will happen in the future. So right now we are trying to change these NatSpec, not the NatSpec specification. The NatSpec specification will stay there, but we're not trying to push developers to write the notice in the right directly for the user, but we are trying to push the developer to add more metadata information about the function, so that then the wallets can interpret that information. I don't know, It could be, okay, this function is about DeFi, or this function is about something else. Or you can also go deeper and like use more detailed tags or categories for the functions, like to describe them. And so here you start building the abstraction, the general abstraction, while reading the function, so that the wallet at the end will not display a simple field from the developer to the user, because developers cannot speak to the final user, but they will gather all of this information, elaborate it, maybe merging it from their own internal analysis of the contracts, and then serve that to the final user. But still, the human readability part is very important, because we are not creating data directly for the user, but for tools to then display those data for the user.
Yeah, no, makes a lot of sense. Really interesting. And I wanted to redirect to you one question that I see on our Discord, and it's kind of related to what I asked you before, or what, like, where my talks about this abstraction and readability, whatever. So there's Massimiliano asking, will don't there's the popular motto, don't trust, verify. What will happen to this motto with account abstraction and more readability, whatever? Will it be something only, maybe specific, or like only for us that are insider of this ecosystem, and will not regard newcomers or like more common users that will not see all the complexity happening behind the scenes? What are your thoughts?
So I think that like today, if you have a Mac, or even I think now it's on Windows, like you have the store from which you can install all of your application, and those applications are the verified application from Apple. And actually, Apple is kind of doing the same thing. Kind of. It's not exactly the same thing, but it's kind of the same thing. And when you install those verified application, the user doesn't know anything. So the final most of the user, they don't know that you can actually download an app from Safari and install it on your system. And what happens when you do it? There is a pop-up from the Mac that says, "Hey, this is not verified. Do you know what are you doing?" So I think that this is kind of what will happen to that motto. It will be like something for geeks that are, like, I don't know, they're testing contracts, or they know what they're doing while using unverified contracts. Maybe old contracts, because all contracts pre or 0.4, they don't have the metadata, so they can just be partially verified. So yeah,
And
just an example.
yeah, but then the issue is because we are trusting Apple here with the verified application that are inside the Apple Store, because we know that they are verified by them. But in this context, I guess we will need to find a way to decentralize somehow the auditing process, or like the verification process, right?
The verification process, we are actually working on it. So we are working on something that we call edge verification. And so you don't even need to trust Sourcify or Etherscan. You will have this, I don't know, it will be a browser extension or whatever, and you automatically verify the contracts by yourself. So you just trust yourself. But of course, for the, like, I don't know, maybe Rosco can answer for the second topic.
Yeah.
About yeah.
Sure, yeah. So I think at least the way I think it will go with account abstraction, I think that there will be a lot of customizability in terms of your experience with crypto and with account abstraction. So I do think, the whole mantra of don't trust but verify, that is very important, and I think we should keep that as like values in the ecosystem. But we also need to acknowledge that a lot of people don't actually want to verify stuff, and those are like mainly people, I guess, that are not in crypto right now. But then the question is, why aren't they in crypto? And it's likely that that's sort of part of this whole having to verify things for yourself is keeping some people out of crypto. But I think something we talked about earlier in this conversation already is, how I think Marco said that you might have different types, different classes of transactions, high value sort of financial transactions versus maybe a bit lower value social or gaming transactions. And you could have different sort of ways to handle those kinds of transactions. And I think in the same way as that, you will probably have just different sets of like account abstraction wallets or setups configurations where people that want to have everything in their own hands, they still can do that. At least that is what I would like to see. But it should also be very possible for people to, give away maybe more control of their funds and have something that is still like self-custodial, but maybe a little bit less so, just to make it easier for just more people to use the technology in general.
Yeah, totally. We'll now move from the readability topic to the security topic, which is of course more related to you, Rosco, and what you're doing with Revoke Cash. Can you tell us like some backstories maybe on how it started and how you think it's of course like being useful and helpful for users out there in terms of accessibility and security especially?
Yeah, so I guess like, so when you use basically any kind of crypto app or smart contract on Ethereum, almost always you'll have to deal with these token approvals, which basically means that you have to give certain smart contracts access to some of your tokens. So if you want to sell an NFT on OpenSea, then you will have to give access to OpenSea. So I think everybody in crypto, or like at least in sort of the EVM side of crypto, is familiar with this kind of concept, at least through experience, but maybe not entirely consciously, because a lot of people I think don't really fully understand what it means to give one of those approvals, or like to give access to your funds, because it's just such an ingrained piece of the whole process. Like, oh, you have to swap tokens, first approve, then swap. So people don't really think about it a lot, I think. And I think that is where Revoke is very good in sort of confronting you with it. You connect your wallet to Revoke maybe, and then you see all of a sudden, oh, I have like dozens of these approvals laying around. What to do about that? And I think sort of if we're talking more in like the context of the future of transactions and account abstraction, things like that, I think again, it might be a double-edged sword in the sense that there is a lot more sort of security measures that you can take with something like account abstraction. Like, for example, it could be possible to approve an allowance and then call a certain function and then revoke the allowance again in the same transaction, so that you don't even have these lingering approvals. You could also clear all your, or like revoke all your approvals in a single transaction with account abstraction, which is something that a lot of people want to do. You know, they want to just completely clean their wallet out of all the approvals, but with normal wallets that we have right now, that is not possible. So I think there's a lot more sort of things that you could do. Then you also have sort of things where maybe you could lock up some of your NFTs, where you would need an extra wallet to sign off on sending them, to have like more security features built into the wallet. So there's, but like the reason why all of this would be possible with account abstraction is because of its flexibility, like its flexibility to add those security features. But that same flexibility also means that it could potentially be possible to do a lot more harmful things with the wallet as well. And then we kind of get back to what I said earlier in the conversation about how it's the responsibility of both wallets and applications to sort of work on the security, and that usually it's kind of harmful when applications such as NFT marketplaces create very elaborate, very flexible applications where, for example, on OpenSea or Blur, you can sell like 40 NFTs in a single transaction. But that means that a scammer can also steal 40 NFTs with a single signature. And I kind of feel the same way about account abstraction and about sort of what the future of transactions is looking like. That we really have to be careful that we actually sort of counterintuitively don't give the users too much flexibility in what they can do with their wallet, because the more flexibility their wallet has, the more sort of harmful actions, the more scams, the more damage scams can do. So yeah, it really has to be a trade-off, and yeah, I'm not sure what that's going to look like yet. But I do think that is something that should be very carefully considered when designing these account abstraction wallet systems.
Marco, do you want to add something on the security on the security side of things?
I don't know. I think, yeah, in this moment, I think we are, we are in a moment in which there is, we are still waiting for hackers to and malicious actor to do those bad things, so that we can take we can create the new revoke.cash to tackle these new problems. So yeah, I think that in this moment we are at this stage.
Yeah. And other than, this is just out of curiosity, other than like, so we mentioned that Sourcify is working on the readability side of things, Revoke Cache on the security side. Do you know of any other projects that are trying to solve these same challenges or something connected to them to improve the accessibility and of like decentralized applications, readability of transactions, of course, again?
So yes, I mentioned before the the action of categorizing smart contracts and the function in the smart contracts. And there are some actors right now. One that comes in my mind is Lore. Maybe I'll send the link later. I don't know if you know it. What they're actually doing, they are creating categories for both contracts and functions, and not just that, they are also they're like creating an abstraction of the metadata file, let's say. that is not specified by the developer, but is specified by themselves. Okay, and basically every user can add more of these metadata fields that right now is hard for me to get to get on the table real examples of those categories. But basically what they want to do is to provide a different, like it's a completely different approach for explaining what a contract is doing and what a function is doing. Of course, right now it's a centralized way. So yeah, this is like still something that has to be solved.
Cool. Yeah. I think in terms of the security aspect, I think there's quite a few interesting projects that are kind of working on, I guess, again, the intersection of human readability and security. Where there's projects like Wallet Guard, for example, that are that have built this browser extension that is, it has a lot of facets, but mostly it has sort of learned to detect what a scam website looks like in like the technical terms. When you land on a website, it kind of looks at the website's code to find common factors that like the website has in common with what sort of their application knows what a scam website looks like, so that you can kind of detect whether you're on like a phishing website, even if the website isn't in like any kind of registry or any kind of blacklist or something like that, which I think is very cool. So yeah, shout out to them. I think there's a few more companies doing things in sort of the extension space. But yeah, I think that is big fan of them.
I have another example now. Now I remembered about. I can't remember actually the name of the project slash company, but I know that some people are actually trying to process the source code with some language model. I mean, it's something that we are also exploring. But it's we have many doubts about it. First of all, because right now language models that are powerful enough needs, like they are centralized, like such as ChatGPT or Bard, and so yeah, again there is the same centralization problem. But then also many times the output of a large language model is always different. It's not always the case. You can actually have I can't remember the right word, so that when you give certain inputs to a language model, then it always gives the same output.
Deterministic.
Yeah, thanks. So this could be another way of tackling this problem.
Yeah, and I think so. I didn't want to ask you this question now, but there's Paolo that I think is asking something related to what you were saying about these language models. So he was wondering if there will be, like specifically for Marco, he mentioned, if there will be a way to retrieve the source code of a given function from a smart contract using an API. I guess he means through Sourceify as well. I don't know.
So yeah, as I said, maybe I can I share my screen?
Yeah.
So I'll show you screen. Wait a second. I'm just gonna detach one window. Okay. Okay. So now you can see my playground. Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is playground.sourcify.dev, and here you can actually see what I was talking about before regarding the metadata field at the end of the bytecode. So basically, here you can type any contract, and any contract the version is more than 0.4. And you can see here the bytecode of the contract. For example, this is the ETH deposit for the staking. So you can see at the end of the bytecode there is this series of hex digits that we call aux data, and this is actually a CBOR encoded JSON that contains multiple fields. Basically, it contains the version of Solidity and an IPFS hash. Okay, this IPFS hash links to the metadata. Okay, and inside the metadata, you can see all the information about for example, the ABI, or you have all the information to recompile the contract. You have the compilation settings, but also you have the sources. So maybe these answers your question. So what I wanted to say is, do not use an API, because the APIs are centralized, but instead use this file appended at the end of the bytecode. And here, in this case, there is the whole content of the file. Most of the time, there is not the content, but there is another IPFS hash, so you can just follow it. And then you can simply, I don't know, find some way with, I don't know in which way, just find the code for your function that you're actually trying to fetch. So this is the decentralized ways of doing it.
Nice. Thank you for the short demo. That was useful, and I think it answered Paolo's question. Before closing, I had like a couple more questions for you. Maybe no, wait, this is the wrong. Okay. Maybe we will start with Rosco, and my questions were, in your opinion, what are like the main roadblocks or challenges in the widespread of these techniques or these improvements that we talked about, like up until now?
I think the biggest sort of challenges is kind of what I ended off with, is that we have to find the right balance between giving people flexibility and control, and sort of limiting those things for the sake of security. And I think we will end up with systems that will support both of these things, where there will be some that are configured to have less flexibility, less control for people that need that, and vice versa. But I think finding the right balance there is definitely going to be a challenge.
Marco?
Yeah. I think the big challenge here is not exactly about human readability, but I think it's more about the rest. Like right now, most of the Ethereum ecosystem is focusing on like the other huge problems. Like last 2 years ago, it was the merge, and like this year, it will be probably account abstraction, and then we have also like optimizing Ethereum for layer 2s. So I think that the big challenge is it's not a focus right now of the ecosystem, the human readability part, because once the ecosystem starts focusing on a problem, the problem actually gets solved quite in a fast way. So this is also like a big point.
Yeah. No, makes sense. And one last question, since we are like already 1 hour, and I'm enjoying this conversation. It was like really interesting. My question is, how long do you think? So now, Marco, you mentioned that the community and the ecosystem is focusing on other issues other than this that we discussed today. So how long do you think it will take for like people to switch their focus, or at least for these challenges to be overcome? So like having
No,
readable transaction,
I
how far
replied.
in the future? Yeah.
The other way is I think that right now some big entities are joining the party, such as some banks or like big companies are actually joining the Ethereum ecosystem, and they think that for them the like solving this issue will be a priority. So if in the next years some of these big companies slash banks are really joining the ecosystem, then I think we will see some like real I don't know, like real new toolings, new tooling to build this new kind of transaction that we talked about.
Rosco?
Yeah,
How long will it take?
I think it kind of feels like we're still pretty far away from where we want to be. But I've always been amazed with how much progress we make sort of looking back, just in general. So I think it might be faster than I think. But yeah, even with that in mind, I think it will definitely take years for us to sort of develop the right standards and the right infrastructure and the right tooling and everything. So we still have a way to go, but we're on the right track, I think. You're muted.
Yeah. So one last question, I swear. And is there any upcoming feature of development in your projects that, of course, like related to this discussion that we had today, that you would like to highlight and you feel like it's relevant to bring the space forward, or I don't know?
I mean, I think one of the recent features of Revoke, the online exploit checker, which you have seen the presentation at ETHDAM, where I think that is definitely a sort of a useful step in the right direction, which essentially, as a user, when there's some big hack or big exploit like we saw in April with SushiSwap getting hacked, as a user you kind of just want to know, oh, did I, like, am I at risk, and if I'm at risk, what do I need to do? So we developed just a sort of a simple checker that just answers that question, because if you have the full sort of Revoke dashboard, you see dozens of approvals and you're like, okay, I don't know what to do with this. So I think this exploit checker is definitely a step in the right direction. But I kind of want to expand on that in the future as well. So just in general, I want to help users sort of understand their different approvals more. So if you have like 50 different approvals, it should be clearer which ones might be risky and why they might be risky versus the ones that might be more like safer or kind of okay. So yeah, just making it more insightful just on the revoke.cash website, making it more insightful what people really need to do. I think that is a big focus in the future.
Yeah, I think I already shielded a bit before with the edge verification. We are not still working on it because we have some other priorities, but I really I really want to start working on it. Actually, if you are a TypeScript developer and if you want to contribute to an open source project and you know how to build a library for both Node.js and the browser, you can join the Sourceify community, and your help is needed.
Cool. Yeah, then I mean, what was great. I really love this chat, and looking forward to meet you in Paris, Marco and Rosco. I'm sure we will meet around the world again. Do you have any closing thoughts? Did you enjoy the session? What do you think?
I mean, I had fun. I had a lot of fun. I love this topic. So I actually, like, while doing this, I actually thought to myself, I have to do this more. Like, I have to invite friends and have this kind of conversation because I think that this kind of conversation really helps us also to keep dreaming and keep building.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I had a lot of fun as well. I think it's both fun and sort of useful and educational to have these kinds of talks. It's also always nice to hear what other people think of the same sort of things that you're thinking about. Might be very different, might be the same. So yeah, a lot of fun. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Cool.
Thanks
to you.
and thank you.
Thanks to the Urbe family who watched this live, and thanks to everybody else that will watch it. We watch this later in the next days or months. Yeah, thank you again, guys. Have a nice evening, and see you soon.
See you soon. Bye bye.
Thanks, guys.
Bye bye.